The European Union. And here's the key point. Those laws aren't made by anyone elected at all. They're not even made by the likes of neo-commissioners. All our laws are made by 1,000 committees of faceless bureaucrats, and even an MEP, like Eddie could well become in a few weeks' time, doesn't even have the right to know who sits on the committees that produce these ideas, that turn them into recommendations, and turn them into draft legislation that ends up as law. That's how undemocratic this system is. It really is a monster. It's a terrible, appalling system of government. And it gets worse, because if it was a system of government imposed on us from abroad, which worked, you could perhaps think, well, at least it works. Let's face it, the Labour government isn't working, is it? You know, but it doesn't work. If it was designed to benefit the people of Britain and the nation of Britain, then you could say, well, we'll give up our freedom because at least we're being governed well. But it's not about benefiting Britain. It's actually about breaking up Britain. It's actually about destroying everything that's been fought for, remember that, by generations of people who died for this country. Because the people building the European Union aren't interested in whether it's good government or bad government. They're interested in it being their system of government. They've got the intention of building a new nation state. They've gone a very long way towards it already. It's got the symbolic things, its own national anthem. It's got its own flag. It's got its own legal system, which is incompatible with ours, and which is gradually grinding ours into the dust. And I tell you, it's not just incompatible, it's inferior to ours. In our legal system, established through hundreds of years of struggle, including civil war by our ancestors, you are innocent unless the state can prove you guilty. In the European system, you are guilty if you're charged by an unelected magistrate until you can prove yourself innocent. It's a terrible, terrible system. It's a system which just about works in the hands of good men. But in the hands of would-be dictators, it's monstrous. But it's coming here, because the European Union has this legal identity, and it's more important than that of the nation states. The European Union has its own police force, its own paramilitary police force, with a huge barracks in southern France, and it's just developing its own army, its own complete military. And the £60 billion I quoted you already doesn't even cover what Britain, the vast amounts of money, billions of pounds every year, Britain is paying into building a European common armed forces. It's disguised as part of our defence budget, but it's actually building a European army. Now, if you ask any Europhile politician, well, what's about this European army? They'll say, don't worry, if your boy's in the army, even if he's in our European army, we won't send him out to fight outside of Europe. Well, that sounds good, doesn't it? Not going to send them out to fight and die in stupid wars in places like Afghanistan that have got nothing to do with us. That's an improvement on where we are now. But think about it a bit. It's not going to be used over there somewhere. So where is it going to be used? So you ask them, well, is it going to be used, for instance, is it going to be stationed on the borders of Greece to stop the Turks invading Europe? Because I'd pay some tax money for that, actually. But, of course, it's not going to be used there at all. Because the same people building this European army are also about to expand Europe, and they want to bring Turkey into Europe anyway. The Turks, 80 million Muslim Turks, won't have to invade Western Europe and Britain. They're going to invite them in and use our taxes to make it more easy for them to come in. So no, there's no prospect, they'll tell you. There's no invading army which by force of arms can conquer Europe. Not even the Russians will or want to. They want to sell us oil and gas at a big profit. They don't want a war. There's no one on the edges of Europe about to invade it for the foreseeable future by force of arms. So the army, they will tell you, it's not going to be used outside of Europe against other people. It's not going to be used on the borders of Europe to defend Europe. Which has to beg the question, what's this bloody thing we're paying so much money for? It's not going to be used out there It's not going to be used on the borders. It's going to be used where? It's here. Or in any European country which finally says, either because all this cost is just too much and in hard times we want to spend our money on our own people, sorting out our own problems, or because a nation says, look, even if it was in our benefit, the fact is we've lost our freedom. And freedom is more important than material well-being. You're better off a poor free man than you are a wealthy pampered slave. So, thanks very much, been nice trying it, but we want to go independent. That's what the European army is for. It's to invade and occupy any country which says, we've had enough, we want to get out. It's a monstrous tyranny being built right now. It gets worse, because you can't build one nation where there's another nation. If you imagine, let me think, Colchester Castle. Most of you have seen Colchester Castle, not that far north from here. If someone was to come along and say, we're going to build a beautiful new castle made of shiny steel and glass in the middle of Colchester, you say, oh, that's interesting. Where are you going to put it? Well, where the old one is. So what are you going to do with the old one? Was hoping you wouldn't ask that because, yeah, we're going to put a bulldozer through it. Because you can't build a bright, shiny Colchester Castle without getting rid of the old one. And similarly, you can't build a huge European super nation without getting rid of the old ones which are in the way. And that particularly includes Britain. And they've already done a pretty good job of getting rid of Britain. Because 15, 20 years ago, it was one United Kingdom. And now they've sliced off Scotland, they've sliced off Wales. And having sliced them off and devolved power, they've then set about ensuring that we increasingly fall out between each other. So we've got the disgracefully unfair system at present, where because the Westminster politicians and the bureaucrats have destroyed heavy industry in this country, steel, coal, shipbuilding, because they've done that, the Scottish economy is now a wreck. And because it's a wreck, someone has to subsidise Scotland. So they tax English taxpayers. The Scots get a parliament, we don't get a parliament. The Scots get free prescriptions, we pay for them, but we don't get free prescriptions. So we end up resenting the Scots. And the Scots don't like the English. And peoples who are very, very close stock end up falling apart and going their separate ways. And that's